talk to us about you and George, about the things, the events that surrounded right after TMI. I know that both of you were involved, especially with what you were doing in your lab.
Yes, well, first of all, it was my dumb luck to be the district emergency coordinator.
Do you need a drink?
Yeah, okay.
You need a drink?
Yeah. District emergency coordinator for the ARES in this area. So I had Lancaster, Lebanon, Dauphin, and I think another one, yeah.
Go ahead.
New Cumberland. Thank you.
Is that enough?
Yeah, that's fine. And that was bad enough. And so I was down at the bottom of the courthouse underneath. And then I called out to the plant to find out what was going on out there. They said, get your butt out here, you're needed. So I said, okay, my assistant EC will take over now. And I charged out to the plant and I walked into my lab and there's Dr. Ralph Angstrom looking at my nuclear analyzer and scratching his face. I knew he wanted me to do something. So we moved my whole 6-foot rack of nuclear instrumentation out into the courtyard between the buildings. And I moved one of our boxes that had a nice, good-sized 5-inch nuclear scintillation crystal that would flash every time a gamma ray would hit it. And I had a nice big fat photomultiplier tube on top that would pick these flashes up. And I got that out there and got it all tightened down and hooked up and fired the thing up. And all of a sudden I got a spectrum of energies across the board. And I had already calibrated it to 662 keV from a cesium isotope. And that was just clobbered with all kinds of stuff. I couldn't figure out. I thought maybe somebody left a sample disc, laying around. So I opened up the back of the equipment cabinet and looked through there. I couldn't find anything, but there was such a smear of energies all the way up, well above 662. I clicked it down 50%, and it was well over 1 meg electron volt equivalency, and there was so much of it I was wishing I had a pair of lead breeches on. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. And after the action, the government said they liberated 9 million curies of radioactive material during that incident. Now, even if you disperse that in a Lambertian distribution, that means that's still a lot of radiation coming out in that direction. But we do know that there was preferential windage there, and it was going north at the time.
Where was it coming from, Jim? Is that the punchline?
No, it was coming from the TMI. Yeah, it was stuff.
They tried hard to melt it down. It really worked out.
Yeah, they shut off the primary coolant.
Well, that's what you have to do to make it melt down.
Yeah.
If you cool it, it won't melt down.
Yeah. Well, it was actually bubbling first, and the air picked up a lot of these particulate things, and they had good ventilation, air ventilation in there, put it right outside, big fans would pull all that stuff outside. And some of it got as far as Lancaster. I saw it myself. And Dr. Engstrom did all the calculation. I fed him all the data I could get off the Hewlett-Packard 5300 multi-channel analyzer is the instrument I used. And that was an expensive machine in those days. But he calculated that all we had to do was wait for 30 days and it would be not dissolved, but diluted to the point it wouldn't be any lasting effects. But after that, they found these 5-foot dandelion plants. And you couldn't convince me that it didn't have major local effects. And I stayed away from that area religiously for a long time. I used to fish down there. No more. They also said they saw a 7-foot catfish down there.
Is this for an RCA or the Susquehanna? This is Susquehanna.
Jim, was this under by RCA?
No.
This was at 3 Mile Island,
So was that
TMI. And
RCA, the gators were only this big.
Oh, I saw some big carp up there at the waterworks there.
yeah, that was the story behind it. Jerry.
Jim, would you say something about 1960, what the other clubs were doing, how many other clubs were in the area, and what was going on? Repeaters were kind of new at that time, so would you say something about 2 meters?
Yeah, 2 meters. There was still AM activity on 2 meters. I had a little 2-meter AM rig, a Benton Harbor lunchbox for 2 meters, and that could come in handy. But 1960 was the beginning of, what was it, Drake introduced a TR2 or something like that. And I think it was a 5-channel unit out on FM. But then the frequency coordinated committee was just getting organized. And some of them wanted wide-spaced channels with plenty of guard room between the channels. Some of them wanted to stack them as close together as many as you could squeeze in the band. So, and let's see, who else? In this area, 1960 was, we had LRTS, and we had Elizabethtown Amateur Radio Society, and
Keystone.
E-Town, yeah.
Keystone, York.
Huh?
York.
York, HZU, that's Keystone. They were on, and
Red Rose was on.
1960? No, I think
No, it was not 1960.
didn't start way back then.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
There was one down in Red Line, I think, but I don't know if they were into the repeater thing yet. The Hilltoppers,
They're still there.
they're still there. But it was spread out, and there was a lot of people did not want to give up AM on 2 meters.
Well, it lasted a long time.
Yeah, a real long time, and some people actually converted their 2-meter AM transceivers to FM, a sort of a FM. It had some AM modulation to it, but it could be detected on a slope detector on an AM receiver.
When did you guys put your first repeater on?
That was, the repeater was put on down at the Breezy View. And that was after 1960. And we organized as Columbia area, had to be 61 when we put that unit on the air as K3FHC slash RPT.
There were no portables yet though, right? There were no walkie-talkies, there were no handy-talkies.
Yes, there was.
On that for FM?
Right, Regency had a 5-channel unit. It was a 3-watt unit. It had one of these pull-out antennas. You know, you could push it down to 19 inches for a quarter wave, or pull it out to whatever it was for a 5/8 wave antenna.
There were a lot of commercial surplus, Motorola and stuff like this.
Oh yeah,
All you do is put in a different crystal and they work.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Back then, Jim, was that on 147.18? Was that their frequency?
147.
Was it 147.18? The original frequency?
No, it's 140. 146.715.
I thought that was later. I thought there was one before that. Like at Breezy View.
So the Breezy View one was on 146.715. The reason why we got away with that was we couldn't hear Lebanon's repeater because the big Chickies Hill shielded us from Lebanon, and we couldn't get that intermod thing. When we moved it up to Ironville, man, we were looking down the throat of that humongous antenna that they had. And the mathematics meant that there's nothing in physics that would allow you to filter out that mathematical relationship.
Pat did everything he could, didn't he?
Yeah, we even called in a couple engineers from other locations, and they took a look at it and did the math, and uh-oh, you're in trouble. So that was the story behind that.
Is that when the club switched to 2.3?
Yeah, well, they decided they couldn't fix the mathematics. So the brigadier and I sat down and did the longitude, latitude of all the open repeater frequencies around this part of the country and figured out the mileage. Back then it was 50 miles. Now it's 75 miles, I think. The one that was most farthest away at the time was a 230 down in northern Delaware, I think. So Sharon and I got in the old buggy and took a trip down to northern Delaware and eyeballed that. Oh, excuse me. We looked at that radio facility down there. It was an old metal shed with about a 20-foot tower with a Ringo Ranger on the top of it. And so when I got to the Welsh Mountains and went over the top of the Welsh Mountains, I couldn't hear it and I couldn't bring it up. I could barely bring it up on the east side of the Welsh Mountains. So that was the best one we tried out. And I was confident that we wouldn't have any problems with that particular frequency. And up to this time, it seemed to work out. And after we tried it out, some of the guys tried it out on simplex and on the input frequency, and tried to bring up the other 230 down in northern Delaware, and couldn't bring it up. So, and it wasn't any tone access either. That was an open repeater. But since then, I think they put a tone on it.
You can't get coordination without a tone.
Yeah,
When we moved from Ironville up to Rapid Township, we were required to.
yeah,
When we relocated, we had to put the tone on.
yeah, that's,
And now we have, the one up at, not Camelback, what's the name of there's a ski resort up by, the
Yeah.
racetrack over Long Pond, and, we hear them pretty strong.
East of the city, they're stronger than we are.
Yeah.
any more questions? I'll try to answer them.
Tell the story of the radar station and doing the circles, collecting up the birds.
Oh, man. Okay.
I don't know why it's about the uniform I got burned either, but that's.
No, that was on another squadron.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, I graduated from the Air Force Air University, got my 3 stripes, and they immediately shipped me out to 682nd Radar Squadron in Almaden, California. Almaden is the same place that grows those grapes, and they make terrific wine out there. Anyway, when you go into a new squadron, you have to do at least 1 week's squadron duty. That's pulling weeds, picking up paper, you know, the regular, that sort of stuff. Well, the 682nd Squadron sent me up to the radio NCOIC, sent me up to the radar chief NCOIC. And so I got up there, and he also had 2 other guys, 2 airmen, Airman 3rd and Airman 2nd, and assigned them to my squad and made me in charge of the DBD squad. I had to ask, what the hell is a DBD squad? And the chief said, you never heard of a DBD squad? I said, no, I have never heard of it. It's the dead bird detail squadron at a radar site. So he handed me a pitchfork, a bucket, and a box of matches, and pointed out where the incinerator was down a couple buildings. He said, okay, the dead bird detail is you pick up all the dead birds around within a quarter mile of the antenna tower. First of all, we pick them off the antenna. So he said that radar thing's gonna slow down and stop. And it'll be stopped for a 1 hour period of time. When it's stopped, I'll show you how to get up onto the antenna. And he showed us where to climb through the hatch, and we walked out on this humongous antenna gantry. And we found 3 dead birds on that antenna. So we hurried and got our butts down off of the antenna, and the siren went off, and they started cranking that thing up. It was an 86-ton antenna. And so we got down to the bottom, and the radar chief said, now, police up within a quarter mile around the radar tower. and we found 4 more dead birds out. Some of them were out very close to the quarter-mile thing. They said a quarter-mile, we aren't going to out any further. We'll find more dead stuff out here, so quarter-mile, we're done. We took our 7 birds up there, and I looked at the one big bird that I took off the antenna, and I got my knife out and carved it open, and bird was cooked to the bone. It was cooked. Now, I was raised on a farm, and we did up 100 to 200 fryers every year, and I knew a cooked bird when I got one, but we never ate any crow. And then I went down and found the chief, and I said, "Chief, how much power do you have to be running on that radar set to knock a bird dead out of the sky at a quarter-mile?" He took a big breath and roared at me, "That information's classified. Don't you ever ask that kind of a question at me again." So I kept my mouth shut. I went back to my own radio section, and I got in trouble back there too. But that was really eye-opening. I figured if the birds were affected that far out, what about low-flying airplanes that buzz to sight every once in a while? I didn't ask that question either. Yeah. Any more questions like that? And no, I won't tell you about the grizzly bear.
Just say, what's there not to tell, Jim?
Huh?
What's there not to tell?
There's a lot.
Yeah, the election over.
Any good RCA stories, especially if they involve these two?
Nothing ever happened out
Any
there.
good RCA stories, especially if they involve these
Nothing
two?
ever happened out there.
Oh, no, except
Some things you don't know.
Some things you don't want to know.
We'd like to.
yeah, except when my assistant dropped that dewar of liquid nitrogen on her foot.
Ooh.
She had these nice nylons with a pattern in. Well, when she took her nylons off, she also had it burnt into her skin too. And that was Noel. Ted knows Noel. Knew Noel.
I don't remember.
Okay.
The RCA complex out there is an old quarry where a lot of waste was disposed of before they had all the rules they have today. GE still owns that. That wasn't sold as part of the deal.
You have plant managers do exactly what they did wrong.
That's right. You got that right.
We used to swim in there.
That explains a lot.
Quarry or the lagoon?
Huh?
They had a quarry and they had a lagoon.
One was better than the other.
Well, what's the solids and what was the
lagoon
liquids?
was actually a very good thing, because if they had an escape, what they do is shut off the exit to the lagoon, so not let the water go down to the Conestoga. Then they go out on a boat and drag treating chemicals around the pond to treat the lagoon itself. So it actually was a good thing.
That was a
But there's a lot of stuff buried around that site that would be totally illegal today. It was not illegal at the time it was done, and you can't write an ex post facto law.
Well, it's like Harrisburg Airport, they had a major problem with, the Air Force had buried drums of trichlor. You were allowed to do it back then.
Yeah.
And after a while, the drums rusted, and they burst, and it was settling, and it was happy to be on the runway.
Not so good.
Not so good.
There's also tons and tons of old equipment buried under that runway.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, you know. Well, thank you everyone for coming out, and, you know, I enjoyed what Jim had to say. Don't feel like you have to run out. We're not gonna turn off the light, hang around and, you know, talk some more, that's fine. Yeah,